like to turn to Rav Yaakov Kaminetzky, one of the greatest Torah scholars of the 20th century. And Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky has a sefer called Emes Yaakov, where he has studies in the Bible and the whole Torah. And so it's a brilliant, brilliant work. And I wanted to spend some time on what he says about the Parashas Devarim. So a lot of his comments are on Rashi, but not all of them. And the first comment he makes is not about Rashi, but it's an interesting comment. He says, it says in the verse, in chapter 1, verse 13, and Moshe Rabbeinu tells the people to bring judges. And he says, Havu lachem anashim, chachamim unevonim, bring for yourself men who are wise, navonim, understanding, viduim l'shiftechem, known to your tribes, v'asimem b'roshechem, and I will make them your leaders. So Rav Yaakov Kaminetzky says something interesting. I don't know anybody here, if anybody here knows any foreign languages. Does anybody here know Russian or German or, well, we'll see from this expression if anybody knows these languages. But Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky, this is, by the way, what makes his commentary so interesting is he actually is, of all the traditional commentaries, he seems to be one of the most worldly of the modern commentaries. Even though he was very much in the yeshiva world, you'll see from this that he has a very worldly approach. He says, L'chora, at first glance, Lashon Rabim de Tevas Ish Hayat Tzarich Liot Ishim. See, I see Elaine has joined us. Elaine's mother studied Hebrew later in life. And if we talk about Ish is a man, if you want to say the plural of Ish should be men, should be from Ish to Ishim, man to men. But, says Rav Yaakov, there's only one time in the Torah where we have the word Ish in the plural as Ishim. And that's in Mishlei, chapter 3, verse 4. Mishlei 3:4. As it says, Aleichem Ishim Ekra. But all the other places, it always appears as Anashim. Okay, so then whoever edited his work, I guess he wrote this from memory, because then somebody writes, really, you find it in two other places in the Bible, in Isaiah 53, and also in Psalms 141. But he says the same explanation there. So it only appears 3 times. And he said, and now he writes as follows, and if you investigate the matter, you'll discover that in many foreign languages, the word for man in the plural is a different form completely. That's what he says. Look at Russian. I don't know if anybody here knows Russian. Or in German, the plural of man is not the same. It doesn't fit the format of like man to men, which is basically the same word in the plural. So here too, it goes from ish to anashim, which is a totally different word. That's what Rav Yaakov says. The reason for this is mipnei shekibutz shel anashim harbei. When you collect a lot of men together, eino tziruf shel harbei yechidim. It's not just a collection of many individuals. Ela hu legamri shem chadash v'inyan chadash. It's a completely new name and new concept. The plural of many different individuals is much greater is a totally different entity than simply the sum of the number of people there. The sum is much greater than the parts. That's what he's basically saying, and much different. So therefore, the word for ish in the plural is not Ishim, but Anashim. And then he explains the reason why it says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, and I guess in Isaiah and Psalms, why it says there in those three places, Ishim, is because they're not really gathering together, but each one of the people there is being called out individually. And he says to look at that, those situations. Okay, so that's the first point that I wanted to record from Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky. His idea of the power of people gathering together is a totally different element than just multiple individuals standing there together. It's a totally new concept. And that's seen by the word anashim. And once you hear that, you're really unable to unhear it. It's a very powerful point that Rabbi Yaakov makes. And then he comments more on that verse. It says, Havu lachem anashim, chachamim unevonim. Choose for yourself men who are wise and understanding, viduim l'shiftechem, who are known to your tribes. Okay, so Rashi says now he goes to Rashi. Let's look at the Rashi. What does it mean that they are known to your tribes? Viduim l'shiftechem. Rashi says shehem nikarim lachem. What does it mean they're well known to your tribes? It means that you know who they are. Shem ba'afanai, if somebody comes before me, Rabbi Yaakov says, mutaf b'talito, wrapped in his garment, Eni yodea mihu, I have no idea who he is. Ume'ezeh shevetu, I don't know what tribe he's from. Vim hagunu, I don't know if he's a good guy. Even though Moshe was selecting them by Ruach HaKodesh, by divine inspiration, he's saying, I don't know 100% if I'm reading the situation. You know who these people are. You raised this person. Therefore it says, known to your tribes. That basically you're choosing people who you know. I want you to choose them because you know them better than me. I could just see a guy wrapped up in his talus, closing his eyes when he prays, and he looks so holy, but you know the full truth. So the word viduim l'shiftechem, which Rashi reads it as well known to your tribes, it doesn't have to be read that way. Rashi is reading it as known to your tribes, but it could also be read as who are known for your tribes, meaning take people for your tribes who are well known, meaning to say take people who have a good reputation, not that you and your tribes know who they are. And that's the way Nachmanides reads it. But if you take that approach, the word for your tribes seems to be unnecessary. So therefore Rashi is saying that these are people who you choose have to be people who your tribes already know about. You've been watching them since they grew up. You know them in middle school. You know them in high school. You know them in college. You know who these people are. They're not going to pull the talus over your eyes, literally speaking. That's what Rashi is saying. So again, before we start Rav Yaakov, let me review what we've said until now. Now that Moshe Rabbeinu says, choose men for your tribes who are wise and understanding. Viduim l'shiftechem. Now you could have read that as people who are known for your tribes to be judges. But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu said, I don't know who these people are. It's impossible. You know who they are. So choose people who are well known amongst you already. You know them since they grew up. You know that these are good guys, honest guys. You need to be the ones to choose them. This is what Rashi says. Comes along Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky, and Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky says, it implies mashma. I'm reading from Rabbi Yaakov. Mashma achora the Rashi mefaresh the Moshe hitzia limtzo chachamim unevonim ela shehosif shiu nikarim bein shivteihem. That Rashi is saying that Moshe wanted to find. He set out to find wise people and people who are smart and they understand, but they also have to be known quantities to their tribes. But this is, Rav Yaakov Kaminetzky points out a problem, because later on in verse 15, it says the people responded, and then Moshe says, I took for your people, heads of the tribes, wise men who are known. But it doesn't say known for your tribes. It says, V'akachas roshei shiftechem, anashim chachamim viduim, ve'temes roshim alechem, and I made them your heads. So that it writes that they were known, but it doesn't write that they were known for your tribes. So, and if you want to say, so Rav Yaakov Kaminetzky says, and now if you want to say that they were already the heads of the tribes before Moshe appointed them, it shouldn't say that they were known to their tribes, because they were the heads. So why didn't it say that? And furthermore, he said that Rav Yaakov Kaminetzky also points out that the trop, or the ta'amim, as they say it, should have been differently. It should have said, meaning to say, the ta'amim, the way they're written now, seem to indicate a connection between nivonim and viduim. And if the way Rashi is reading it, the connection should be between viduim and shiftechem, and not between nivonim and viduim. And so therefore, he says, the Targum Yonasan says the following. He says that he explains it like it says in Parashas Kisisa, that what does it mean viduim? Not that they were known to the tribes, but that the word known means bidas, that they have intelligence, meaning to say that it's similar to the word understanding, that they are yodea, that there are people who know. And that's another way to interpret it. So now we've seen that there are two levels of the possible way of understanding what the judges should be. One is it means that they're known quantities, that we know that they're not fakers, they're not pulling the wool over our eyes. And the other possibility is that it means that these are people, it's another form of knowledge that they have. Then he quotes Maimonides, Rambam, in chapter 9 from the Laws of Gifts to the Poor. He says the following: Kol ir sheyesh ba Yisrael, every city that has a Jew in it, chayavin la'amin mehen gabbai tzedakah, is obligated to appoint a collector of charity. Anashim yiduim v'ne'amanim, people who are known and trusted. So there, the Rambam uses this phrase, people are known and trusted. And the Radvaz is the 14th century Sephardic authority. He writes, or maybe 15th, late 14th, early 15th, he says, I understand why they need to be trusted, but why does it mean that they need to be known? So it must be meaning to say that he explains that the Rambam means that they have intelligence, that they're trusted and they have intelligence. And then he records a third position. The third position is Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra says, now what does it mean? It means from an expression of chibah, that these are people who are beloved. The word Yodeya can also mean people who are beloved. Ki yedativ lashon chiba, kamo mudali isha, is beloved by the wife. Like ever hear to know somebody in the biblical sense, it's an expression of love. So that's a third approach. And so therefore, Rav Yaakov Kaminetzky is he's offering three explanations of what does it mean that these judges need to be chachamim, nivonim, viyodim l'shift, or viduim l'shiftechem. What does it mean? It means either wise understanding and known to the tribes, like Rashi says, that Moshe Rabbeinu knows that the tribes know who they are, so they're not a faker, or else it means that these are people who are exceptionally smart, they have another level of understanding, or else it means the third approach of Ibn Ezra, then it means that these are people who are beloved by everybody. These are the three possible interpretations of what this word viduim means. Then I saw another commentary of Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky about the phrase, this is actually something very interesting, in chapter 1, verse 22. Let me just pause for a moment. Does anybody have any questions? I'll see if your hands go up. Okay, no hands are going up. Okay, so let me go to this next phrase, which I saw, which was a very beautiful explanation of Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky. It says in chapter 1, verse 22, the following. The verse says as follows. It says, "Vatikrivuna alai kulchem v'tomru nishlacha nashim lefanenu v'yachru anu es haaretz v'yashivu osanu davar." So this is a reference to Moshe Rabbeinu's beginning his speech at the start of Devarim, and he's talking about the fact that they came to the mountains of the Amorites, and at that moment they were about to go into the land of Canaan. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, "We're here at the mountains. We're about to go in, and you all came to me, and you said, let's send men before us and scout out the land, and they'll bring the matter back to us. And the matter was good in my eyes. The matter, it was a good idea, I thought, to send spies. We all know that it was a disaster, that it ended up in a tremendous tragedy, and the children of Israel stayed there for 40 years because of the sin that was made. But what does it mean, Vatikrivun alai kulchem? All of you came to me. So that's what Rashi says, Vatikrivun alai kulchem bi'ir buvia. You all came to me. Bi'ir buvia means like a mixture, like a rabble, like a mob. Like you're harassing us. Like you ever imagine one of those town hall meetings where everybody's getting, like they've been pent up, waiting to say something terrible. So that's what he's saying. And later on it says in the verse, and you approached me, all the heads of your tribes. Vatomru heineranu. So that's below in chapter 5, verse 20. And there it states that this was after the 10 Commandments were said, that they said it's too much for us to hear it. But there, who approached? Rashi shiftechem v'ziknechem. There wasn't all the people. There the people who came to Moses and said, we can't hear the word directly from God. We need to hear it through you. There was just the heads of the tribes. So later on, that approach, Rashi says, that approach was proper. It was proper that when they approached Moshe at the end, it was done by the leadership. They sat down like menches, they were drinking coffee. They said to Moshe, listen, it's not working like this. It's too much. But and that's Rashi says is the right way. The younger people are honoring their elders, and they send the elders ahead of them. And the elders were honoring the heads of the tribes. But here, all of you came. The children were pushing the elders. The elders were pushing the people who were the heads of the tribes. Everybody was pushing like in a rabble. So it was the wrong way to approach Moshe. So that's what Rashi says. It means that they approached to send out the spies in this manner was the wrong way. So let's look what Rav Yaakov Kaminetzky says about this. He's basically going to just take the Rashi, which is right before us, and come up with a very powerful idea which we can all use in our own lives. So he says, he quotes the Rashi, and then he says, Biur Adavar. The explanation of what Rashi means. What's the problem that they approached Moshe and the rabble? The Eina Kavanah. The intent here of Moshe was not Sheta'an Moshe Lahem. That Moshe's not making a complaint against them. The intent here is not Moshe saying, listen, you guys don't know how to ask. You don't know how to honor Torah. You don't know how to behave like menches. That's not what Moshe was complaining about. Because Kima shaychut bein zeh bein chaytam raglim. Because what's the connection between that and the sin of the spies? But rather, what was Moshe Rabbeinu saying? Kanaita tfiyah. Here, the complaint of Moses was that they didn't come with respect to the spies. The manner in which they approached Moshe demonstrated that they didn't have faith in God. The way in which they approached God approached Moshe showed that they had no faith in Hashem. God says, have faith in me, don't be afraid, don't fear. And since they came to him in this rabble, in this confused state, that proves that they had no faith in Hashem. And indeed, they were terribly afraid of their fate. And that's why Moshe shows to them that the source of their sin with the spies was their lack of faith in Hashem. Because if they had had faith, they wouldn't have come in this confused rabble. They would have approached it in the respectful manner. So when everybody's in a panic, that's what demonstrated their lack of faith in Hashem. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying. I knew even before I sent the spies, that you were in this state of panic, and I knew that this was a disaster. And so if that's the case, says Rav Yaakov Kaminetzky, then why does the very next pasuk say, Vayitav beinei hadavar, that it was good in Moshe's eyes to send them? So if Moshe knew that they were coming without faith, why does Moshe Rabbeinu say it was good in my eyes to send you? And I selected 12 men. How can you say it was good in his eyes? He saw that they're coming to him in this rabble rouse. They're coming to him in this mob. They're coming to him without faith in Hashem, that they're asking in the wrong manner. That shows a tremendous lack of faith. So why does Moshe Rabbeinu then say, it was good in my eyes to send you? So we have to explain this, says Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky, in accordance with the way the Ramban writes in Parshas Bechukosai. What does Ramban write? Ramban writes, okay, this is an interesting, the Ramban writes, I don't know, we're not supposed to take this literally, but the Ramban writes, everybody has to do when we have a challenge from Hashem, you can't just say, okay, I have complete faith, I don't need to do anything. Obviously, that's not going to work for us. But that's because our level is nowhere near the great level of the tremendous prophets like Moshe Rabbeinu. But the efforts we have to make, which is called in the rabbinic literature hishtadlus, this is we each have to do our own hishtadlus. We have to make our own efforts. That directly corresponds to a person's faith. Meaning to say, if we have less faith in Hashem, we have to do more hishtadlus. We're required to do it. If we have tremendous faith in God, then we don't have to do as much hishtadlus. So therefore, this is what Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky writes, quoting Ramban. He says, therefore, we who are standing on a lower level of faith, there's no way we have the level of faith of the earlier generations, we have to go to doctors. We have to do our ishtadlus, because we're not on that level of Moshe Rabbeinu, who had such complete faith. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't need a doctor, but we need the doctors. But the ultimate goal would be to have such faith in Hashem that we wouldn't need a doctor, but we just completely have trust in Hashem Yisbarach. That's what Nachmanides writes. Basically, go to doctors today, but that's only because we don't have 100% faith in God like Moses. And so he says that this is explaining what Moshe Rabbeinu did. How so? Moshe Rabbeinu saw that they came to him with this tremendous lack of faith in God. He saw that they were this rabble, that they were people who didn't have faith. And he says, oh, well, if that's the case, since they don't have the faith, then the miracles are not going to work for them anymore. So we're going to have to fight for the land. We're going to fight for the land of Israel. And since we're going to have to fight for the land of Israel, then we need to send spies to scout out the land. And so therefore, that's why the matter was good in his eyes. So that's what Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky says, a very, very clever but also deep explanation, which has consequences for our own lives. That Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky says that what does it mean? What was Moshe saying? What was the problem with the way they came? They didn't ask. The way they asked demonstrated that they didn't have belief in Hashem, and because they didn't have belief in Hashem, then it works both ways. Which is that then it works both ways. That since they don't have belief in Hashem, therefore Hashem's miracles are not going to happen. Hold on one second. Since we don't have belief in Hashem, therefore Hashem's miracles are not going to be completely successful on our behalf. And so therefore, for that reason, Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, once I see that you don't have the complete faith in Hashem, therefore we certainly have to send out the spies to scout out the land for us. And so this is the two explanations that we saw from Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky. We saw earlier two explanations from Moshe Feinstein about the Rashi. From Moshe Feinstein, we saw the approach that all of us need to be there to hear the rebuke of Moshe, so that none of us take solace in our spiritual level and think we're beyond sin. And we saw the second approach of Moshe Feinstein, which is that Moshe Rabbeinu's greatness, and we should only study from someone who has this approach, is that he toiled for Torah study, didn't take it lightly, took it incredibly seriously. And then the third approach is what we saw today was from Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky. Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky said that we saw actually two things from Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky, that he says, first of all, the plural word in Hebrew for ish is not ishim, although that appears 3 times in Tanakh, but anashim. And that's because the plural of man is a completely different concept than a group of individuals together. It's a whole new concept completely. And that's why in Hebrew it goes from ish to anashim. And then he says that what does the word viduim mean? It can mean 3 things. It can mean A, known to your tribes. Take judges who you've known for a long time to know they're not fakers, or take judges who are yiduim, they have great knowledge, or 3, take judges who are beloved by you, yiduim as in coming from the word to be beloved. And now he teaches us that the issue of the way they asked the question demonstrated that the people had a lack of faith, and from that's what was clear from the way they asked the question. And from their lack of faith, okay, once Moshe Rabbeinu saw that they lacked faith, well, it says now we have no choice but to send out spies, because according to the faith you have, that's where the miracles will happen. And so therefore they had to send out spies because they couldn't rely upon God using miracles to help them conquer the land. Those are the teachings of Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetzky on our parsha this week. Okay, so I'll take any questions that anybody has at this point.